and communicating those boundaries, you are telling others how you want and expect to be treated, but also you are telling them what they can expect from you and what you expect from them in return. So you are being completely transparent from the start, which often builds really strong relationships, both personally and professionally. So you are helping them as well as helping yourself. But it's just that fear of judgment that people have in the back of their head. But they are there for you. You flex them however it fits with your life.
Hello, and welcome back to the Biz on the Brain podcast with your host, Annemarie, where we talk about everything surrounding being authentically and unapologetically yourself in any type of way you show up in your life and business to really tap into your intuition, attract the right kind of clients, build an empire that's really aligned with yourself so you can really infuse your personality and all the things feel at ease and in flow. And we do that through having discussions with all kinds of entrepreneurs all around the world from all kinds of walks of life and different backgrounds and businesses, because I think it's really, really important to broaden your horizon and tap into different worldviews, different perceptions, and actually explore different ways of being and doing and seeing the world. And that just helps you give yourself more compassion, give others more compassion. And in this episode, with the absolutely fantastic, colorful, and beautiful Kate Browning, I am diving into all of these topics with her. We're having a really deep discussion about how it is so self-serving in the best way and in the most generous way to other people too, to show up as yourself, to not limit yourself, but at the same time set boundaries to help you thrive and help others know how to engage with yourself, and in turn inspiring them to really build a life of their dreams and foster very deep and nurturing relationships just by setting boundaries. And I have always struggled with boundaries. For the longest time, I saw them as bad, as like putting up walls or as limiting yourself. And I've been struggling with people pleasing. That's it. And I know a lot of other people, especially female entrepreneurs, do too. So this podcast is all about that. But I don't want to already cover all of the points because Kate does it really beautiful, because that is her expertise. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the wonderful Kate Browning from Cherry Blossom Management. Hi, Kate. Welcome to this podcast. I'm so happy to have you on because you are the creative boundaries unicorn. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what I need. And I think a lot of more people need that, the creativity and the boundary setting, both in your personal and in your business life, because it just really helps you live more in tune with yourself, but also helps others understand how you show up in the world and what you need. And it just really helps foster deep relationships. And me being a recovering people pleaser, for the longest time, I thought it would be selfish to set boundaries, when in fact, it's actually the opposite. So would you like to introduce yourself real quick, and how did you arrive where you are right now?
Yeah, so thank you very much. So you, like many others, struggle with setting boundaries, because if you're a natural people pleaser, if you are an empath, even if you're a perfectionist, then boundaries don't necessarily come naturally. I am a recovering people pleaser and I am an empath. So those things don't always come naturally, and they didn't to me. So I have spent many years learning how not to do it, making all the mistakes, not having the boundaries, and learning the hard way from what comes when you don't have boundaries. And I've come full circle, and now my business, my life, everything revolves around my boundaries and around my self-care. It's how I work, it's how I build relationships. And now it's a much more natural process, but that has been a long process to get there.
Oh, I bet. It is really a hard road to get on, and people who just haven't been there don't really know how hard it is and how taxing and anxiety inducing it can be to set a simple boundary.
Yeah.
It is so foreign. It feels so uncomfortable and almost threatening to a point where I suddenly I'm triggered with the feeling of rejection. That is usually like it for me, that I feel like, oh my God, if I do this and people will like shun me and I'll be all alone in the world, basically in essence. And yeah, what is the first step that people need to take? Is it just being mindful of it, or like what would you recommend?
It's once it's getting to that point where you understand that boundaries are only going to benefit you. They're going to help you and they're going to help others around you. So the starting point is ideally, I mean, most women when they come to me when they want to set boundaries are at burnout. And ideally, you'd like to set boundaries before you get to that point, but that's a very easy thing to do. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So with boundaries, it's a case of you need to be able to get comfortable being uncomfortable to start with. Because as you said, a lot of people, especially women, struggle with boundary setting because they fear judgment. They fear what other people will think, or they are scared of disappointing people, or as you said, a fear of failure. My biggest fear was a fear of failure. So I understand exactly where you're coming from, because that is my biggest and always has been a biggest fear of mine. So when you have those, almost they're like limiting beliefs that are in your head that are there to plant doubt. And you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because when you first set boundaries, if you are an empath or you are a people pleaser, it's going to feel uncomfortable. But it will, I promise, it will get better. It will get easier, and you will see wonderful things come from it. An example, like I worked with a client last year on boundaries. Now she had run her own business for 5 years, very successful at what she does, amazing, wonderful human being, but she was a massive people pleaser. And she had a few clients that were taking the mick a little bit, not because they were bad people, because she'd never set boundaries. They just kept pushing, because she always said yes. She was a yes woman, and she was afraid
relate to that.
No. And she really, really struggled with her boundaries. And we worked together for about 3 or 4 months. And one of her biggest fears was, what are people going to think of me? Are people going to think I'm a bitch if I put this boundary in place? Or another fear was she wanted to drop to 4 days a week working, but she was afraid that people would think she would be lazy and consider her lazy. And I turned it back on her, because often what we think of ourselves, we don't think of others. We are our own worst critic. And I said to her, well, I work 4 days a week. Do you think I'm lazy? And she's like, no, you're the hardest working person I know. So what's the difference for you? There is none. You are a hard person too. Just because you don't want to work Fridays doesn't mean you're any less hardworking. And people that work with you and your clients aren't going to think you're lazy because you don't work this day. So she had all these fears of people's judgment and what people would think of her. And now the toxic clients are gone. She doesn't work Fridays. She runs her business her way. And she attracts, because she now sets these strong boundaries in place, she attracts the clients that will instantly respect those boundaries from the start, because she lays it out from the beginning. Whereas before, she didn't attract that, because that's not what she was putting out into the world.
Yeah. And I think that's like one big part of my current business journey, where I try to do it for myself and also my clients, to really show up full on, like authenticity overload, everywhere you show up as yourself, and to tell people how you work and how you take on jobs and what your approach is and what your ideal clients are, so that the people don't come at you and try to negotiate your boundaries, try to negotiate your worth or the way they want you to work for them when you're your own boss, because otherwise you could have just been employed, right? Yeah. So when I realized that I started a business and I can do it however the heck I want, and it does not matter what everybody else thinks, because everybody has an opinion, and that's fine, but I don't have to take it on, and my life isn't theirs, and the same goes the other way around. So knowing that I can't judge other people, saying they shouldn't judge me, and I don't need to take it on. And I can just really create the life of my dreams in my own parameters of whatever success is or my values are. So at the core of it, I need to actually know, what are my values? Do I want to hustle all the time, or do I really just enjoy breaks and being quote unquote lazy? If that is really my sign of success, where I am comfortable and I'm not striving for all of the cash, maybe I just need it as a means to an end, and maybe I don't need to villa, maybe I'm fine with like whatever life, and other people might not be, and that's really on them. And it really helps you be clear, and then you can attract more people that way when you're just really open and really transparent from the start.
Yeah.
So people can be like, yes, I like that approach, or really I don't want someone, I want someone to work to the ground for my business. Then you can repel them and you can say, absolutely no, maybe I can refer you if you like them and if you know somebody, or you can just send them on their way. It's just easy as that, because we have so many people out in the world, so many other people.
Yeah, and one of the quotes that I love that helped me when I first started setting boundaries was, someone once said to me, other people's opinions of you are none of your business.
Yeah.
They're not, because I used to, where you're a people pleaser, where you're an empath, and I consider myself to be a good person, I have a good moral grounding, I have a good heart. Everything I do comes from a place of love and positivity. I never do anything from a place of negativeness. So when it used to be, oh, if someone doesn't like me, it's like, oh, why don't they like me? What's wrong with me?
Right.
And now it's none of my business. If they don't like me, that's okay. I am definitely not everybody's cup of tea. And I am more than happy to not be everybody's cup of tea, because then, as you said, you attract your tribe. You attract the people that are going to like who you are as a person, who you are individually, and they're going to like your vibe and your quirkiness. And, I call myself a unicorn. That's not going to be for everybody. That's certainly probably not the corporate world. But I am not a corporate type of person. I've done the corporate world. I don't want to do the corporate world anymore. And it's about what you see for me. What you see is what you get. This is me.
Yeah.
And I will always be honest with you, and the same with you, that if I get clients that come to me that perhaps aren't the right fit, I would always recommend them on to someone else that would be a better fit, because there is plenty of work out there for everyone. And my husband once said to me, so I will only work with you if I like you. And to the point that if I can see that there might even be a potential friendship there, because why not? I don't have mates. And my husband's like, but you can't work like that. You can't only work with people you like. I was like, I absolutely can. I set up my business to do it my way. And if I like you as a person and I enjoy interacting with you and I like our conversations, I'm going to push that little bit harder for you to get you the result you want, because I'm genuinely invested, because I care about you. If I don't like you, I'm not going to be able to do a good job for you.
Exactly. I get so much pushback from people when I mention stuff like that. Like during my 9 years like entrepreneuring around the world, people were like, no, you can't just pick and choose. You have to take what you have, especially like if you need the money, you just take any job and you do this. And I was trying it and then I hated it. And I just actually don't have to. There's always a way to work something out, to figure something out, or to find opportunities that maybe even are just getting like, if times are tough, like there's always a way to figure out some way to make money that it might not be like the way I want to do, but it doesn't have to be the way that I really, really don't want to do it. There's so many skills that I have, but I don't have to monetize all of them. It's also like a typical lie. A lot of people tell you like you have to do something, and so you have to be good at it. Like, why would you start a hobby if you suck at it? Like you can suck at everything. And there's so many businesses out there also that are pretty mediocre, but they still do the job. And there's always a market for everything. You don't always need an expert. Sometimes you just need something quick and messy, or you just don't know yet what you want, so you try different things. And so you have to be really mindful of actually what you want, where you want to be, so you're not just going with whatever the stream throws you in. So you can end up in these people's laps, basically, and then you think whatever they're serving is really good, but sometimes your inner voice will tell you absolutely no, walk away. And it doesn't feel logical sometimes. It doesn't feel like you can justify to someone. That has been like one of my biggest struggles, because I'm very intuitive, and over the past couple of years I felt really out of it, which is why I started a podcast to talk about it and work it out. But so many times I just knew, and I didn't even know myself why or how. It didn't make sense to me even. And then it's so hard to stand your ground and set your boundaries when it's so vague, but it doesn't make sense. But your gut is like, absolutely doing this thing, absolutely not going to do this thing. And then the world will try to almost push you to see if you're actually steadfast.
Yeah.
And so what advice would you give in that? Like, how do you approach that when you just know, but it doesn't really give you anything to hold on to? It makes you much more vulnerable to it because you don't know what the next steps are, where you're going.
And again, it's going back to that, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, or not being comfortable with it, but be prepared to be uncomfortable. It was like I made a recent change in my business because, as you know, I do the boundaries mentoring with women, but I also run a creative agency. Now, before a creative agency, it was a virtual assistant agency. And I did that for 3.5 years. But I am a creative person. You can probably tell with the pink hair and the tattoos and the cool cats in the background. So I am a naturally creative person. So to move to a creative agency felt right for me. It felt like a natural progression, but it took me so long to do it because it was a scary process. It meant pushing my business down further. It meant culling clients. It meant saying no to business. And ironically, within 2 days of changing it to a creative agency, I got a VA inquiry for a massive job, which I turned away. And it's sod's law. I hadn't had one for a few weeks. And then as soon as I changed to a creative agency, the universe sent it my way. But I know I know I'm one of these people like you. I'm very intuitive and I go with my gut. Now, I would always recommend listen to your gut. It is absolutely telling you where to go. On the odd occasion I have chosen to ignore it, I have every single time regretted that decision. Every single time without fail. So if you want to start inviting boundaries into your life, which for me, boundaries are all about creating a life that's aligned with your values, creating a life that brings you joy, makes you happy. And for me, I'm unconventional. I run my business my way. I ignore the shoulds and how you are taught to do it. You run it how it works for you. So for me, boundaries are all about creating a life and a business that brings you joy and following that path. So when you start setting boundaries, you want to start really small. You want to, don't try and go, right, I'm going to have 10 boundaries. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw it all in at once because you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to get stressed. You're going to find it hard and you're not going to stick to it. Start with one at a time. And the way to set a boundary is to look at where you want to be. So whether you want to do visualization or manifestation or a vision board, however you work in regards to where you want to be, think about where you want to be and then what you need to do to get there. So for me, a goal is to eventually be down to 3 days a week. That is my goal, is to work 3 days a week. I don't have children. It's nothing to do with that. I just want to work less and earn more. I want to have quality of life and I want to have a balance. So in order to be able to do that, I originally had to start dropping Fridays. So how did I do that? I started with finishing early on a Friday and then I dropped it to a half day and then I eventually managed to drop it to a whole day. But I thought about, right, this is where I want to be. So this is what I need to do to get there. And in order to still grow my business and reduce my hours, I knew I needed to grow a team. So I have a team of 3 associates in my creative agency that work with me. Without them, I wouldn't be able to achieve my goal. So it's looking at where you want to be and then taking the steps for how you want to get there.
I love that. And did you tell people about it, or did you, because in the beginning when you set your boundaries, it's a bit vulnerable, so you're much more easy for attack and doubt, even if people mean well or don't mean it neutrally. Sometimes it can feel more like a genuine questioning because you're already questioning it maybe yourself. So how can you fortify that through coaching? Because you have like accountability like that way?
Yes. So I'm the type of person that I want to put it out into the universe that makes me accountable for my actions. So as soon as I've started putting it out into the universe since December last year, that by August this year, my goal is to be down to 3 days a week. So I'm putting it out to the universe. I am telling people because it makes me accountable for that. I have had judgment for that, but I don't care. I've got to the point, I think I've got to the point in my life where I genuinely care. People's values and people's opinions care for those that I care about, those that want to have a real impact in the world and have a positive impact in my life. That matters. But people's opinions of me, as I said before, are none of my business. Just because this is the way that you don't work, it doesn't mean it's the way that I don't work. So, and when it's going back to your point when you talked about success and what success is to you, everyone's idea of success is so different. Mine is not monetary driven. Yes, I am driven, and I'm not afraid to say this. I am motivated by money, but I'm motivated by money in a way that I want to be financially secure and I want stability because I come from a background of financial insecurity. And I'm driven by money in the fact that I see it as if I earn more, then I have more money that I can do good in the world with and have a positive impact in other people's lives. Because I think putting that money in the hands of the right people, the difference we could make would be just lush and gorgeous. So, yes. But my idea of success is not a multi-million-pound company working 7 days a week with 50,000 employees. And that's lovely, and there is no persecution or judgment on my part. If that is your goal, that is amazing. But for me, my idea of success is just being happy, having adventures, and having a positive impact on others. That's my idea of success.
I love that. And I think everybody should just, whatever you feel like journaling or drawing or dancing, but just think about how you would define success and maybe even how that changed over time, because I sure have had different phases in my life where I, again, definitely was influenced from the outside of what, success was shown on TV, on a media, what your family associates with. And you said you came from like a background of financial insecurity, and I can relate to that. We were never like poor, but we were always about saving it, holding on to it, maximizing as much as you have and getting out of it, being really resourceful, as opposed to actually really investing and multiplying it. That really scared me. Like I remember in university, my dad really tried to get me to be interested in finances and like investing. And I was so against it. I was absolutely rebelling against it. It made no sense to me, but I was like, I do not want to look at it. It felt almost like that's a man's job and I don't want to do this. I don't know what it is. They want to rip off my money. I felt really, really scared. It's one of the biggest like money blocks that I had. And I managed to save a lot of money, which really, really helped me after graduating when I didn't get a job at all. And then I decided to travel the world. And so I was like, you know what? I have all of this money. That was like really eye-opening to me. I had lived a life that everybody told me I should lead, right? Study, like even just study, get something good, work in corporate, and then retire. So that was what people told me, right? And so I saved all of this money, never spent it, never did anything really fun with it. Also, like I'm an introvert, like a hermit crab in my room all the time. So, and then suddenly I didn't get the job. I didn't get to move somewhere. I didn't need to rent a place. I didn't get a car. And so I was like, so what is all the point of this? And then realizing I actually don't want any of that. I really don't. And so I decided to travel and then decide I'll figure it out on the way, which is when I started my business, and then things fell into place. But it was just a gigantic leap of, I'm just going to kind of blow this money is how it felt, instead of just investing in memorable experiences and life-changing experiences, which helped me in my business, which helped me to grow. So it was an investment, but I did not see that at the time. It felt very frivolous, and people were telling me so. And that was so hard for me to do, but I felt it in my bones, and like that was the only way I needed to go forward. It didn't make sense, but I did it. And so absolutely, you need to listen to your gut in that way. But how do you feel your gut talking to you? Because it's different for everybody else. So how does it show up for you?
Yeah, and it's different for everyone. For me, it is a real physical reaction. For some people, they just think about it and it's a feeling. For me, it's a physical reaction. It's like someone's punching me in the stomach. I get a real physical reaction when I have a gut reaction, and I normally have a really strong reaction as well. And it's those ones where your gut is throwing up lots of red flags. They're the ones that you really want to listen to and pay attention to. And they're the ones that can be really hard. Like, for example, if you have an inquiry with a potential new client and you're having this conversation and you're getting red flags throughout the conversation, your gut is telling you, don't do it. But if you're in a situation where you're financially insecure or you need that extra client to be able to pay your rent this month, having the strength to say no is really, really tough. And also, I think in this situation, this is where people fear judgment. So if you've got strong boundaries in place here, the boundaries will work with you. So there are fixed boundaries and there are flexible boundaries. There are two types of boundaries. And which ones are fixed and which ones are flexible are entirely up to you. And as you said, as you grow and your goals change and what you want out of life changes, your boundaries are going to change with it. And if for some reason on one day you choose that you're going to change one of your fixed boundaries for this specific person, for whatever reason that may be, there is no judgment. The point is these boundaries are in your control. It is your choice. I've had a client that was afraid to, there was a client asking her to do a job which pushed against one of her boundaries. However, it didn't affect her or her business in a negative way. She really liked this client. She actually wanted to do the project for this client, but she knew if she did it, it would break a boundary. And she came to me, she said, if I break this boundary, then I failed, or I failed you, or I've not, the mentoring side, I'm afraid of disappointing you. I'm like, that's not how it works. These boundaries are here to protect you. If it doesn't impact you in a negative way, then you can absolutely flex those boundaries to whatever you want them to be. The idea is that they are there to make your life easier. And they will eventually make the clients' lives easier as well, because by setting a boundary and communicating those boundaries, you are telling others how you want and expect to be treated, but also you are telling them what they can expect from you and what you expect from them in return. So you are being completely transparent from the start, which often builds really strong relationships, both personally and professionally. So you are helping them as well as helping yourself. But it's just that fear of judgment that people have in the back of their head. But they are there for you. You flex them however it fits with your life.
No, that's so important. And almost like a contract of sorts where you stipulate exactly how long you're going to work on this project, how many reiterations you can offer, like editings. Because in the beginning, when I started, I was deadly afraid of having a contract in place. It would look like daunting and maybe put people off. And sometimes it does, because like a lot of legal text, but it's just to protect both sides in the end. Because I've had people push back and I was like, it literally is also to protect you. You know exactly what you're going to get. If I don't deliver, you can sue me on it in the same way. If you just ghost me mid-project, I can still claim compensation. And so we're both adults. Like, we agreed on this work together. And if we're just doing what we're supposed to be doing, what we agreed on, then everything's fine. But same with boundaries, there's always consequences. If you push against it, if you overstep it, then you can remove yourself from the situation. So you're always in control, or you just cut the people out, for instance. Like, there's so many ways you can act on it to enforce your boundaries. It's not just informing people, also, this is how it is. And then people keep stepping over and you're being sad about it, which I was for the longest time. I was like, I told them I don't like this. And I didn't do anything. I could have enforced them, because people will push against it if you give them the space. So sometimes it's just really, this is what it is. It's a statement. It's not up for debate. I'm just informing you. There's like my terms on the website. There's my terms in the contract, maybe even an onboarding book. You can like present it in different ways, but just be really clear. And then people also feel more secure. If you present it in a way that's like, I'm sorry, I have all of these terms, then people will pick up on that energy, and then they feel squeamish about it. But if you just like, here, these are the terms, and so we're just both protected or whatever. In business, it's normal. So don't even overthink it. So if you want to frame it in a way, you can just set it as your contract for yourself, for your business, have it set up by a lawyer to feel more like externalized if you still feel too personal about it.
I just think you've got to build it into part of your routine. And especially for those, say you've been running a business for 3 years already and you haven't got any boundaries in place, but you want to start putting boundaries in place. You think, is it too late for me to do that? It's absolutely not too late for you to do that. As I said, if you start one at a time, don't go to a client and say, here's a new document, here's a contract, sign it. The way I enforce my boundaries is examples of my working hours. So I work 9 till 4, Monday to Thursday. So I have it on my email signature, my working hours. I have an automated responder on my emails, which says, I will respond within 48 hours inside of my working hours. I will normally respond sooner, but it gives me that buffer that if I'm busy or I'm out of the office, it manages expectations from the start. And before a client works with me, they get a welcome document. And in that welcome document, it outlines some of my boundaries, like working hours, how we will communicate, what you can expect from me, and things like that. So I send them this document before we start working together, so their expectations are set from the start. So if you wanted to start putting boundaries in place, you can start by doing something simple like that. Even an email autoresponder, it manages their expectations, because we've all worked with those clients that have emailed us, and then 20 minutes later they've emailed us again, and then half an hour later they've emailed us again because we haven't responded. Right. Now, you're always going to get these type of people, but unless you manage their expectations of when they can expect to receive a response from you, they're going to keep going. So you need to tell them, you will get a response within this time, and that is it. And if you respond sooner, fantastic. But it's one of those things that if you set a boundary, but then you don't stick to it. So say to a client, I'm available from 9 till 4, Monday to Thursday, and they email at 10 o'clock at night, and you choose to respond, you are then setting an expectation for that person. So my clients all know I've got a client that works really well in the early hours of the morning, and she works at like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I've said to her, you can absolutely email me at whatever time of day you want, but you will not get a response until I am within my working hours. So it's just letting people know, it's managing their expectations. And I haven't had one person come to me and say, you're being a bitch, or I don't like your boundaries, or I think you're being rude, or I haven't had one person do this. What I have actually ended up having by having these strong boundaries and putting them in place is my clients are then seeing my boundaries and they're learning from it, and they're putting boundaries in place in their business. I've started seeing the autoresponders coming on that weren't there before. I've started seeing the working hours. I've started seeing them not responding to emails out of hours. They are learning from it and putting it into their life. I love seeing that.
Absolutely. Or like even yesterday, I had someone, like I had a call scheduled, and then they wrote to me like a couple hours early, and they were like, can we just schedule it a little bit later? Because I have such a busy day and I haven't eaten. So could I get the break? And I was like, of course, absolutely. And then it made me think, I'd never done that. I have never asked someone to reschedule because I'm hungry. I always thought I have to suck it up. And it just like hit me. I'm like, what? How easy is that? And I was not mad about it. And I would expect other people not to be mad either, because if I have the space and if I have the time, I would definitely want you to eat and be fully prepared and present for me. Yeah. You know, I don't want you to suffer through a call. Like that isn't helping anybody. So definitely. And I've also had a coach, and she was like, yeah, you can send me voice messages anytime. And I was like, anytime? And I was like, are you sure? Like, you know, different time zones and such. Like if I message you at 10 p.m., like, am I going to wake you? And she's like, no, I don't respond at these hours. And then I felt good about it, because I was like, I can, anytime I feel like it, I can say it without having to like censor myself or hold back, and then I forget my thought. But I'm still not disturbing her, because she has proper boundaries in place that made me feel safe and that made me feel respected, and again reflect on it. And I'm like, where can I apply this in my life? So it really works for both ways. It gives you a security and more information on how you feel respectful towards other people, because everybody has different ways they feel respected, and it just really helps. That is actually not selfish at all. It is really generous in a way.
Yeah, and also it's that a massive part of when I work with someone on boundaries is that self-care always comes out as one of the big key things when we go through boundaries. Often people that lack boundaries lack self-care. They don't prioritize themselves. They don't prioritize their needs. They are putting their clients first. They're putting their family first, their spouse, whoever, because they are people pleasers. And because I work, when it comes to boundaries, exclusively with women, we have been brought up to serve others, and you know, you will be a good wife, a good mother, a good secretary, whatever it is. You know, it's a sexist upbringing to a certain extent, and I was certainly brought up to take care of other people. I grew up, both my parents were disabled, so I used to care for my parents from about the age of 4 or 5. And it was natural to me that caring for others was a natural response, because that was my purpose. That's what I thought my purpose was looking after other people. And it's interesting to see that all of the roles I have done before setting up my own business were roles where I was supporting and taking care of other people. I've been a wedding planner, that's a massive supportive role, and a PA, massive supporting role, and worked for a charity, big supporting role. So it's reflected in the roles that I've done. But one of the things that I never used to prioritize until I strengthened my boundaries was the self-care aspect. And I think people see self-care, either they see it as selfish or they see it as lazy. And it's one of those things that it's a behavior that we have to unlearn, because self-care is not selfish and it is not lazy. And to the point that being selfish isn't necessarily a bad thing. So there can be negative, there is negative connotations with being selfish, and there are bad versions of being a selfish human being. But being selfish when putting yourself first isn't a bad thing, because if we take care of ourselves better, we can then be a better business owner, a better wife, a better mother, a better entrepreneur, whatever it is that, drives you forward. If you don't take care of yourself, you certainly can't be firing on all cylinders, taking care of everyone else at the same time. And I've learned this the hard way. So as I said, like, my business and my life revolves around my boundaries, but it also massively revolves around self-care. This is part of the reason I reduced my working hours. It's part of the reason I finish at 4 o'clock, because I know my brain doesn't really function very well after 4 o'clock. So I could keep working, but you're not going to get the best out of me. If we had a phone call after 4, it'd be gibberish, because I'm tired by that point and I'm ready to rest. I'm done. So it serves me, but it serves other people as well. And I learned the hard way, because I've got various chronic illnesses and health conditions that mean if I don't prioritize self-care, I'm then forced to, because my body will make me poorly and will force me into rest. So I used to do it that way, that I'd work, then I'd burn out and have to rest. And then I'd do the cycle over and over again. And it's a really rubbish cycle to be in. It is such a naff place. But it's because we are taught that it's lazy. And it's absolutely not lazy. I have worked with clients and helped them incorporate self-care into their routine, whether it's regular breaks or finishing early on a day, or even like self-care can be just giving your mind just space. So for me, part of my self-care is personal development and being able to develop myself as a human being and a business owner, because that makes me happy and it makes me a better business owner. But if I don't give myself space for that, then I can't do that. So a lot of people think self-care is just bubble baths and candles, and all of it is part of it, but there is so much more to self-care. It's what helps you feel rested, what rejuvenates you, what brings you joy, and what makes you happy. And I've worked with clients that now incorporate self-care as part of their routine, and they've ended up working a little bit less because they prioritize their self-care, but they've grown their business. Their business is double the size it was. They are more productive because they've created space in their mind for, one, them to relax and downtime, but two, you also create space for your creativeness and your new ideas and the development and all of that, because you're giving your head space to be able to do that. So each and every single one of my clients that I've worked with that has incorporated self-care, their business, even though they work less, their business has grown and got better. You can do both. And I think people are worried that if they take that time for self-care, that their income will drop or their business will get smaller. That's absolutely not the case. I work less hours than I did 3.5 years ago, but my income is higher, my team is higher, and I am a happier person for it. So you can do both.
Exactly. And that's why, they're trialing out the 4-day work weeks. And they just had amazing results, because in that time you have less time to do your work. So you're actually much more focused, much more productive, because otherwise you would fill the time. And a lot of times also I've seen it a lot, and I have done it a lot too. need to look busy to not look lazy during breaks, or because you just have a low time, like low energy or even low client time. And then especially if you work in corporate, you're always like being perceived and observed and judged in some way. And it doesn't really help at all. So if you give people the benefit of the doubt, if you treat them as adults who can manage themselves and just trust in their outcome, and then judge them on the outcome and not in however way they get there, because sometimes, especially with creative work, it can come out of the blue, and sometimes it is not there at all. So you just try everything. You just go for a walk, you just go on a trip, you just lie on the floor, you just stay out the window. It does not matter, as long as you just let it go. Just calm yourself down, just be in the moment. It is not lazy. And even if it is lazy, that is also fine, because we're not machines, we're humans. And we were never meant to work so much. That is such a recent invention of the past 100 years, right? And then we're also much more affluent, especially in Western countries. There is still, of course, a lot of privilege saying that, but if you have the means to take a break, you definitely deserve it. Your mental health deserves it, because it will just have a trickle-down effect. Like, you inspire people to set more boundaries. It can be true the other way around. If I just constantly snap at people, I'm being irritated, I'm not honoring people's boundaries, they in turn will get very mad at me, and then maybe carry that on throughout their day, and then just treat other people negatively, and then it just spirals from that. We just really have responsibility to ourselves, which in fact others. So we're living in a society, so we're always in correlations with others, and so you need to also look at your relation to others. Like when you said, like, what are you? Do you define yourself as a mother, as a co-worker, as what do you define yourself as you, without anybody else? Like, imagine if everybody loved you, or if everybody hated you. It does not matter. How do you see yourself? What do you want to be? Is that what you are showing up as? Do you want to be generous and honest, but you keep feeling like you have to lie to people or hide your face, yourself, your flaws? Is that in line with your honesty? Is that it? Why do you have this double standard? So it's really helpful to backtrack from that, which is hard, but you're more than just a function, right?
And it's that thing of, and I was guilty of this before being really strong with the boundaries and self-care, is that many people attach their self-worth to their productivity.
Oh, yeah,
and I absolutely used to do that. And I do not do it anymore. Your self-worth has absolutely bugger all to do with your productivity. So some people look at it, and if they haven't had a really productive day, then they haven't contributed enough, and therefore they can't be worthy of love or respect or business growth or whatever it is. And 100%, absolutely, your self-worth is not attached to your productivity. For me, my self-worth is attached to the positive impact I have with the people I interact with, whether that's with clients, whether that's speaking to you, whether that is someone that listens to the podcast, whether that is a stranger in the street. I'm one of these weirdos that will approach you in a shop and say, I love your outfit, or you've got a great hair. I'm one of these weirdos that will approach you and compliment you, because why would you not want to make someone feel good? Like, for me, bringing others joy makes me happy. It brings me joy. It feeds my soul. I don't measure my whole worth and my being on it, because that is a lot of pressure. And again, this is something I am learning. But for me, my worth is based on the positive impact that I have with the people that I interact with. Even if that is one tiny conversation with a friend, then to me, that is a joyous thing. That is a wonderful thing. But I still think people are learning to detach their self-worth from their productivity. And I completely get that, because I was one of those people for a long time.
And it's almost glorified in the entrepreneur community, the hustle mentality. It's just churning out, hustling, or what are you doing? It's your own fault. Almost like the corporate version of the American dream. If you haven't made it, it's your own fault. There are no factors of luck or situation or just sheer chance involved, which is not fair.
No, it's not. And I actually had this exact conversation with someone that I met networking recently. And it was very clear that we had very opposing views and approaches on how we do business. So for me, self-care and boundaries are really important. For me, having a balance, spending my time within my business, but also spending my time with things that aren't within my business. Like I love arts and I love movies and I love music and I love cats and I love nature. And there are lots of things. And for me, having a balance of how I spend my time is really important, which is why I'm working less but still working to grow my business. Whereas this person I spoke to, she had retired the previous year. And then within 2 months, she decided she didn't want to retire and she'd set up 2 new businesses. And she worked 6 to 7 days a week. And we had the conversation. She's like, so you work 4 days a week? I was like, yeah. And I said, the goal is to be down to 3 by the end of this year. And she's like, and this is your business? I was like, yeah. And she's like, this is your only income? I was like, yeah, and it's a decent income. I've grown my business quite well over the 3.5 years I've had it. And she couldn't understand why I wouldn't want to work every day within my business if I loved what I do. And I absolutely love what I do. I love my creative agency, but also working with women on their boundaries is my purpose. It's what I was put on this earth to do, because I know that I can have such a great impact with women and help them create that life they want. But she couldn't understand why I wouldn't want to work every day within my business. And we had such opposing views. And I was like, I can't wait to retire. I can't wait to retire. Yes, I love what I do and I will always do something, but I'm looking forward to retiring. I certainly don't want to be working when I'm 80. No thanks. I want to spend quality time with my husband and my cats and whatever. And I found it really interesting, but I learned from it, because I think everyone in business still makes assumptions that, well, we still make assumptions. I made the assumption that why would people not want to work less and earn more? Because that's my goal. But that's not everyone else's goal. Not everyone wants what you want. And that was a really good learning curve for me, to be able to have that conversation with her. We still communicate and we talk and we send each other emails, even though we have completely opposite views on how we run business and approach the world. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make my views wrong. It doesn't make her views wrong. They're just different because we have different goals. And that's okay. Her idea of success is different to my idea of success. It's going back to that, isn't it?
It's so beautiful. And that's why it's so important to have conversations outside of your bubble. It's why I love travel so much, because you get to see people from so many different walks of life, different cultures, different backgrounds. Like I've talked to so many people I would have never approached at home on the street. Like I've talked to Hells Angels bikers who are like the nicest people. You know, I talked to grave diggers or corporate people or yogi people or surfer dudes. Like there's so many people around the world, and you just start talking to them without any presumptions, without any expectations of where it's going to go. You know, you never know if you like the person, if you like the conversation, and you do not have to agree, do not have to convert people to your view or push yourself on other people because you don't know their story. You know, they don't owe you anything and they don't have to confirm anything for you, but it just really shakes up your worldview. And in the end, what it did to me is question myself, my own upbringing, my own culture, which, you know, I love the reverse culture show because it's just so severe and so almost underappreciated, because it will really shock you more than the actual culture, because you're prepared for that, but you're not prepared for your own internal change when you come home. And then you see nobody has experience that earthquake moment and they treat you as you were before, but you are now essentially different, you're a different version. And so again, that's why you need to look at yourself and then set the boundaries where like, okay, I've had this change of mind, or I'm doing things now differently. This is what is happening. And it's so much harder for people who have like been in your close circle to kind of work with the boundaries. So sometimes they will like push against it or ignore it. And then again, it comes down to how you handle that and how you want to communicate that, because I think communication is really, really at the core of it. They don't have to understand because they haven't been in your shoes, but it's just about extending respect and compassion in a way that, you know, so this makes me feel that way if you do that, and I need you to do this or stop doing this, or then there's a consequence. And it's just really getting people to stay in your life, essentially. It's just like, if you don't do it, well, then we're parting ways. And if you're really willing to work on a relationship, if it's platonic, business, or romantic, whatever way, it's really important. It's just like actually a chance for people to get to know you as you are in all of your shades and forms in whatever way in your life you are right in, because you're always changing forever. You can't hold on to yourself. You can't hold on for other people. So I think that's really at the core of it, just like accepting the change.
Yeah. And it's being okay with people will come and go in your life. And if you are creating a life that is aligned with your values and revolves around boundaries, and a life that brings you joy, that you are going into with positive intentions, coming from a place of love, and there is someone within your life that cannot respect those boundaries, it is okay to say goodbye to them. It is okay to let them go if it doesn't fit, because boundaries not only massively impact your business, but they impact your personal life as well. They are there to set, and create. They really do. They promote and encourage strong, healthy relationships. And if you then have these relationships that have toxicity to them, and they are within your life, and it tends to highlight those toxic relationships, and it has a tendency to really bring them out. And then the decision is yours, whether you want to keep that toxicity in your life or whether you want to say goodbye. And yes, it can be really tough, but it is absolutely okay to say goodbye to a toxic relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had those where I still feel sad about it, but it was absolutely necessary. And they're not bad people. It just didn't work in that way, right? And if they're not willing to meet you halfway or just meet your needs, like boundaries and whatever, then
boundaries
it's not fit.
Yeah, boundaries aren't set. You're not setting really unrealistic expectations and demands, and you must call me Queen or Your Majesty. You're not setting like really unrealistic expectations. You are just setting values and boundaries that are there to meet your basic needs and are there to ensure that your life is filled with joy and encourage positivity. And if someone can't meet that, then that is on them, not on you. You are not being unrealistic and unreasonable in what you are asking.
Exactly. And that's so important, because you always can find those people who will just understand it or accept it. And so if you always feel like challenged, maybe you just need a different environment that will build you up and nourish you, because the environment really, really has such an impact on you. Yeah. If you just keep constantly reaffirming and restating it, that's what I found. Like, even if you're like so firm in yourself, but you're wasting so much energy on trying to keep all of that up, then you need to move. Then that's your own boundary. You've been crossing, you've been draining your own energy. You've been letting people in your life who take it from you, having all of these energy vampires. So it's time for a change in whatever way or form. And it really, sometimes you feel like I felt like I'm in a fog, I just trying to like battle it out and just trying to be true to myself. But once I just removed myself completely from the situation and saw it like from outside, then I can also like lend more compassion to why they're doing what they're doing. I can understand it doesn't mean I have to tolerate it, but I also can help myself first so I can help other people. So if I'm constantly in a state of having to justify myself, then I cannot really help other people because I'm so busy with myself. And once I'm much more comfortable and safe and secure, then I am free to give more. I can hire more people, I can go travel and inspire more people, I can make more podcasts, support charities. And that in turn is just really also the beauty of boundaries, really.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of those things where the two things I am massively protective of are how I spend my time and energy and who I spend it with and on. I am super protective of those two things now, whereas before I would say, I don't know, yes to lots of one-to-ones that you meet with people networking, and yes to doing things and spending my time with people that I knew would be a drain on energy or would have a negative impact on my well-being. And now I'm super protective of those two things because they are so precious, and time is the one commodity that you can't get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So being protective of your time and your energy will then fall into your boundaries naturally.
Absolutely. And that's also like where the intuition comes in, when you just feel like, I'm at my limits, or this person doesn't really feel right, or something's off, or just it's not right timing, whatever. So you just say, sorry, I'm not available right now. Like, you don't have to explain it. You don't have to be squeamish about it. Like, it's just also for them, so they know that they can't really expect much from you at this point. So it's just being, again, clear communication and honoring yourself.
And that's one of those things that I teach my clients when I work with them is no is a complete sentence. Often, if you're a people pleaser, you want to over-explain why you can't do it and how you can't do it and all of it. And no, you can absolutely say, I'm sorry, this isn't right for me at this time. I wish you luck. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, it's on the other people if they try to interpret something in that. Just like, no, it's just a no. It doesn't mean anything other than a no. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was such a really, really cool chat. I hope a lot of people took a lot from it. I certainly could have used all of this like 9 years ago when I started out. Oh my God.
Yeah, me too.
Any other tips that you really wanted to get across that we haven't touched on?
No, I think it's just remembering that when you want to set boundaries, start small, be kind to yourself, start at the end and think about where you want to be, and remember that other people's opinions are none of your business.
Exactly. And you can like mess up, it's okay to just have trouble with setting boundaries and just be kind to yourself.
It's trial and error. And the one thing that you will find when, especially if boundaries are a new thing to you, the one thing you will find is that it's one of those things that practice makes perfect. It will feel difficult, it will feel icky, it will feel uncomfortable when you first start. The more you do it, the more natural it will become.
Absolutely. Where can people find you online?
So they can find me. So my business, I haven't actually said the name of my business, is Cherry Blossom Management. So they can find me on my website, or the two social media platforms I hang out tend to be Instagram and LinkedIn. They are my platforms, so you can find me there.
Nice. I will put the link down in the show notes. Perfect. And everybody should check her out and say hi and really spread the love, work on your boundaries and be nice and kind. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I wish you a fabulous day and I hope to see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Without further ado, let me introduce to you the wonderful Kate Browning from Cherry Blossom Management. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast episode of Biz on the Brain. If you liked it and if you want to get in touch with Kate, be sure to click on the links down in the show notes and just say hi, give lovely feedback, connect, and just look at her inspiring work and just appreciate all of the colors and the individuality she puts in all of her work, because that I find really inspiring. And I love looking at other entrepreneurs' profiles to just feel inspired, to get ideas for my business, and to also feel kind of validated in my approach of being just myself. Really, if you see more people doing it, it feels so much better to do it yourself instead of just, copying other people's style and trends and looking all corporate sleek because you think that is where you need to be in business. It helps looking at people who are already treading a pathway kind of want to tread. And so I encourage you to check it out, follow her, and give her a little shout out. And if you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to it so you can get notifications of what is new, what the new episode is about, and follow me on all of my socials as well, where I will announce new episodes and give you some snippets of the best quotables in case you just need a little bit of a dose of other people's perspective and cool insights into entrepreneur lifestyle. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I wish you a fabulous day. Bye-bye.